Welcome in, everybody, to Redacted on this Wednesday. And we're going to look at, should we have a second American Revolution in this country? Maybe it's time. Maybe it's time for the 100 million Americans that don't vote and who are sick of this entire process and who realize the corruption that lies at the heart of this entire election system in the United States and this government. It's time to throw off the shackles of this government and start a new one, just like Thomas Jefferson had wished that we would do. So we will talk about that in the wake of the Massie election last night.
Clayton's been nothing but sanguine since.
Yeah.
Well,
I'm furious, but I'm going to try to put it into words, and we'll have a conversation about it. So get in your thoughts today, and we'll have a conversation with the audience. So please get in your super chats, any other chats you want right now, and we'll have a conversation about it.
We're also going to look at the Russia-China summit because way to go, the United States. Trying to crush those two economies only brought those two stronger, historic economic deals showing a shift of power to the East. I mean, it's a classic example of like a bad guy's plan gone wrong, accomplishing exactly what they meant to not accomplish. So we're going to talk to Jim Dratras about this. I'm looking forward to it. Also, why was Epstein advising the Obama administration on cryptocurrency? Dropsite News has that story. They are doing that. So, okay. We're going to look into that new reporting as well. The Epstein story, the Epstein class continues.
Well, they don't want this. They certainly don't want people to talk about the Epstein class. Absolutely. And that's part of the election last night. So we'll talk about that. Also, what does it mean to be a patriot anymore in the United States of America? Clint Russell is going to be joining us a little bit later to talk about all of that. So get in your thoughts now, and let's try to unpack this. So I just want to say a few words now about the election last night. And is it time in the United States of America to call upon a second American Revolution? Bringing together Americans who don't vote, who 100 million of them don't vote in the United States, and who see the corruption for what it is in the United States, which is massive control inside Washington, D.C. I was sort of reticent, sanguine, I guess is the good word to say last night upon the Massie defeat last night in Kentucky. And of course, you can see the video from Ed Galrain's victory event where there is about 30 people there. And of course, the numbers are pouring in now to say clearly that this was probably rigged. I mean, 356% increase in voter turnout, the likes of which we've never seen before. Tens of millions of dollars, of course, pouring into Kentucky in the weeks before this election from super PACs, Israel First super PACs, AIPAC, and others. And then you see Massie's turnout during his concession speech last night, and you can see the room is packed with people. There's hundreds of people there showing their support. Does that look like someone who maybe lost this election? It's hard to say. But if you kind of step back from all of that and you kind of think about the battle lines that have been drawn between the right and the left, between Republicans and Democrats, and this idea that we need to support one over the other, and that somehow your vote would have even counted in Kentucky with the amount of money that was poured in from outside interests in order to move this election one way or the other, the 10,000 mail-in ballots that suddenly showed up for Ed Galrain at the last second. It's enough to make any normal American scratch their head. Like if you're a thinking American, even if you're like MAGA, you probably got to sit back. You might not say it publicly on Twitter, but you probably would sit back and be like, yeah, someone put their finger on the scale here, clearly. Pete Hegseth at the Pentagon shows up. The Pentagon shows up to support Ed Galrain 24 hours before this election. Never been done before that the Secretary of War shows up to campaign on behalf of an opponent, a sitting member of Congress. Like, it doesn't make sense at all. So I was hopeful. I was certainly hopeful that Thomas Massie, even though he's not in my district, I live in Colorado, that he at least represented what I believe about America, which is patriotism, which is the Constitution, which is a limited government. Keep your government out of my business. Stop sending billions of dollars to foreign wars, killing our sons and daughters overseas. Like, how about we invest in the United States of America? The right to vote, the SAVE Act, which he voted for, by the way. He was a yes on the SAVE Act. Didn't stop Ed Galrain from posting a basically felonious tweet 24 hours before telling Americans that he voted against the SAVE Act. No, he didn't. He voted for election integrity. Oh, you'd have to actually show an ID to protect America's elections. So, but last night, even though I was hopeful, and in the afternoon I was still a little hopeful, despite all of the money that had poured in, that maybe enough Americans, enough Kentuckians would go out and there would be enough votes to sway this giant money machine that poured in. But in the end, last night, I just felt sad because this just confirmed the truth. It confirmed what we already all know, which is that this system is rigged. And the system does not have your interests at heart nor mine. It is a massive money machine that benefits a few oligarchs that control Washington, D.C. And when you understand that this idea that the real reason Massie lost was because he defied Trump, like that's the Fox News narrative about all of this, right? Is that Massie lost because he defied Trump. No, he didn't. Trump has been a puppet of the big money. When all of those billions of dollars, millions of dollars flowed to Trump ahead of the election, the money moved from Kamala Harris and the Democrats to President Trump because he could be used as a puppet. That's the bottom line. It wasn't about defying Trump at all. It was the phone calls that they received about the Epstein files. And Marjorie Taylor Greene laid it out perfectly. We were all called that if you were going to vote for this discharge petition on the Epstein files, that we will come for you. You will be destroyed. And that's been confirmed by other journalists, that those phone calls were leveled at members of Congress, Massie included. If you vote for the release of the Epstein files, you will be destroyed. So they destroyed Marjorie Taylor Greene. They destroyed Thomas Massie. Of course, Lauren Boebert is likely next. They'll go after her next. And they'll clean house. So the real reason Massie lost is because he defied the donor class. He defied all of the money that was telling members of Congress, you don't get to vote to release the Epstein files. And you remember many, many months before that, it was told to us that it was all one big Democratic hoax. Even though so many Democrats are listed in the Epstein files. What? It's a Democratic hoax? The Democrats really want the Epstein files released? None of them wanted it released. That's the play here. It's like this uniparty play. So this real America versus like fake America first. That's really at the heart of it. This idea that there is some sort of like the MAGA movement is a make America first, make America great again, versus like the Massies who are somehow in the tank in another way. This idea that there's like a red team, blue team trap, and that's what we've all sort of fallen into. And you can already see how this is already starting to unfold over the past 24 hours. Just look at Twitter last night. It was like watching like a cesspool last night. Like, here's an example. Oh, so Massie loses. He's obviously pro-Islam, I guess. Keep on being a doomer. It's just making MAGA stronger. So all these people like Dan Bongino and others sort of celebrating Massie's loss, an America First member of Congress who wants to put this country first. But Dan Bongino wakes up in the morning and lights a candle for Israel. And he admitted as much. The first thing he does in the morning is, and the first thing that he thinks about is Israel when he wakes up in the morning. I don't know about you, Shabbat Shalom, but that's not what I think of when I wake up in the morning. I think about my kids and my family, and I think about my job, and I think about how I can make my family better in this country. But okay, you think of Israel first. So those lines, the MAGA is back message was like all over. I'm sure you saw it on X last night. Like, MAGA's so back. Massie lost. Okay. What does that even mean?
That's what I was going to ask.
What does that mean?
The power of influence?
Right. So what you're saying is that $32 million that came in to support another country and to eliminate a U.S. member of Congress who wants to put America first, that's how MAGA is back? the very things that President Trump campaigned on and then walked away from is somehow back? Is suddenly we're going to see massive infrastructure being built out in the United States, no more foreign wars, not bombing other countries, not sending money to Ukraine, which has continued? Okay. We're going to eliminate the income tax. Remember President Trump teased that? We're going to eliminate that. That would bring so much wealth to the United States. We're going to eliminate the income tax. Okay. Still waiting for that to happen. So how is that exactly is that making America great again? Just a little unclear about all of that. And then the other side of it was, now I'm going to vote for Democrats. I'm going to jump to the other side, like Nick Fuentes saying we need to burn the whole thing down, and I'm going to now vote for, it's still back to the red and blue. Red versus blue. Here was Nick Fuentes last night.
The neocons, these people, the Likudniks, they have been in control of the GOP, and all I know is this apparatus needs to be shut down. That's all I know. This Rupert Murdoch, Fox News, Trump, Ike Perlmutter, Paul Singer, Miriam Adelson, AIPAC, Trump thing needs to be fucking destroyed. And I don't care who does it. It can be James Fishback. It can be Thomas Massie. It can be Steve Bannon. It can be the Democrats. It can be AOC. I don't care who does it. Fuck them.
Okay. So that's the other side, which is now we're going to switch. And so now it's Democrats. It's Democrats that are going to save the day, which of course misses the entire point, which is that this is one massive uniparty, and that's the real power structure. This idea that they create chaos and keep us in this perpetual state of chaos. What Colonel Towner Watkins says is the strategy of tension. It's how you can assassinate Charlie Kirk in broad daylight, who was actually bringing people together, having a dialogue, and breaking down this division between right and left, Democrat, Republican, shining a light on the uniparty. Can't have that. So we'll assassinate him in broad daylight. That's what we'll do. And so that's at the heart of it, this uniparty, the real power structure. So this idea that, oh, we're so back, MAGA's so back because Massie lost. Really? He's the most MAGA member of Congress there is. But okay.
What do they want? What do you want? You want people to blindly follow President Trump, I guess, because I thought MAGA wanted no foreign wars, no foreign interference. No.
Huge applause lines when President Trump would get up there during the campaign and say, no more foreign wars. When he leveled that criticism at Jeb Bush and talked about the devastation of the Iraq war. That's the first time I looked back and said, holy smokes, did he just say that? They're never going to let this guy become president. How's that going to happen? You're going to level a massive criticism against the Iraq war? How is that going to happen? And you're going to call it out for what it is? Millions of people died, one of the worst disasters in American history, and you just said that to Jeb Bush's face? Holy smokes.
Small G government? No, we don't have that. Our Doge efforts were a joke, right? Foreign debt, global debt. Now, high gas prices. When Trump got on the plane in 2020, when Biden was elected, he said, enjoy your high gas prices because that's what you're going to get. Now, what do they stand for other than blind allegiance to President Trump? That was never supposed to be. The MAGA criticized the Democrats for refusing to criticize Joe Biden when it was apparent that it was necessary. And now that's what they're doing. I don't understand. If you want to explain to me what the MAGA platform is now, I'm all ears. I would love to understand it because I thought that it was everything that Thomas Massie stood for.
The third thing you saw emerging last night was this idea that Massie should run for president in 2028. And that brings me really back to this idea of the cult of personality is not going to save us. They're never going to allow Massie to become president of the United States. The money controls President Trump. He is a puppet. That's it, at the heart of it. He is a puppet of all of this oligarch money. There's a reason freaking Adelson was in China with him on his trip. Like, what? So all of this money flows in. You're not going to have someone like Massie who refuses to take any of it. And then, of course, they can manipulate. There's a reason, by the way, that the 2024 election with President Trump winning was like the safest and most secure election of our lifetime. right? As they tell us. No problems. There's no irregularities at all. There's no irregularities because he was the chosen one. He was the puppet. He was the money. Kamala Harris wasn't. All that money had moved from Kamala to him. So voting irregularities, midnight ballot dumps, 2024, massive landslide, no problems. So they can manipulate these elections in any way that they want to. And so that's why there's 100 million Americans who don't believe in this system, who believe it's rigged. Are you one of them? Like, do you believe it's rigged? I think last night was the clearest sign yet that when you have $32 million pouring in from outside influence in order to sway an election where no one gave a rat's ass about Ed Galbraith at all, couldn't even string 2 sentences together in an interview on television, avoided debates, over 8 of them, no one showing up for events. The Pentagon has to fly in and try to shore up support. You know that the whole thing is rigged.
The guy's almost 70. He does not have grassroots enthusiasm. Anyone who tries to sell you that is smoking something.
Well, you had thousands of local donations coming in and donors supporting Thomas Massie last night. Only 70 local donors supporting Galbraith. 70. That tells you everything you need to know about Kentucky and this election and how the system is rigged. And so this idea, fantasy of like Massie running for president, it's a joke. A friend of the show, Mike Adams, posted last night, people need to be smacked upside the head if they think for a second that that's going to change anything. First of all, that they would even allow it to happen.
Oh, he'll be Bernie Sanders so fast.
It's never going to happen. It's not going to happen, as much as I love the guy. But you can't, it's just like this cult of personality idea that like someone's going to save us. To Fuentes' point, I don't care if it's James Fishback, so he's going to be the new savior. Is it going to be Ro Khanna is going to be the new savior that's going to save America? Is it going to be AOC? Anybody who's involved in this claptrap and giant uniparty corrupt mechanism is not going to save anybody. So that's why during commercial breaks, I remember having conversations with Tucker Carlson back when he and I worked on Fox and Friends together, and he would talk about the corruption. He says, "Oh, that's why I don't vote." And I remember saying to him, "You don't vote? Like, that's our secret right as Americans, right? We vote. Our votes count. Our votes make a change." And he just said, "No, they don't." So it's very odd, of course, because he supported President Trump, and it's the first time that he voted in decades. Why? Because of the message, right? If Tucker Carlson, a very smart individual, one of the smartest people I know personally, could be swayed by that message, then think about how many people who aren't as smart as Tucker Carlson who would go along with that message at a rally. Oh, no more foreign wars? You're going to release the Epstein files? You're going to shine a light on transparency, tell us who killed JFK? You're going to tell us who really was Epstein? None of it has happened. And everyone's been duped. Why? Because it was never true. It was never going to happen. So Trump is a controlled figure in Washington, D.C., and that's who will become the next president of the United States, a controlled figure in Washington, D.C. So then what do we do? Why? I think because like why Massie's loss matters to me, and I've just been thinking about it all day as I've been like walking the dog and ruminating over this. It's that like all politics is local. So what can people do? They can take care of their own families. Right? We're not going to rely on the federal government to save us. We need, as part of this like second American revolution, it needs to be a moral revolution in this country. It needs to be a family first revolution in this country. It needs to be an FU to the federal government moment in this country. It needs to be, I'm going to put my family first, make sure that I have healthy food for my kids, make sure that I have water for my family, that I'm protecting my neighborhood, my local community. That my finances are shored up, that I can protect them outside the U.S. dollar system and this corrupt banking infrastructure. And that's how we can affect change. And then, yes, local politics where there's not big money. There's only 1,000 people that vote at the local school board, the coroner, the sheriff's races. Have your voice heard at the school board meetings. Make changes so that potholes get fixed. That's where real change happens anyway. You know, that park down the street that has all the drug needles, like let's get the local police department to get those homeless people out of there and all the criminals out of there and affect change there. Because if you're waiting on the federal government to help you, it's not going to happen. I mean, just look at North Carolina and just think about the people after Hurricane Helene, right? Did they call on the federal? They hoped that the federal government would come in and help them, but they didn't. Who helped them? The local people helped them. The Amish came down from Pennsylvania to help them, to raise barns, to help them get out of these floodplains, to try to rebuild their homes again. Wait for FEMA. So all that to say, I think if we can join together and marshal the 100 million Americans that don't vote, that actually see it for what it is, that this system is an absolute disaster. They want us playing like right versus left, Democrats, Republicans. Now you all shift over to be a liberal, vote with that corrupt party. You're going to rally behind Ro Khanna, AOC, and Bernie Sanders. And then 4 years later, you'll run back over here and get behind John Thune, Mike Johnson again. It's all a joke, in my opinion. And so I think we need if we're gonna do anything in this country, those 100 million Americans that see the system rigged for what it is need to come together and have a nonviolent American revolution and install a party or a voice in this country that actually stands for them outside this corruption. But it's going to require like all of us to come together. But I think the Massie race last night was really a moment. It's a tipping point moment, in my opinion. Anyway, that's my opinion. And I just wanted to speak extemporaneously and get this off my chest because I'm so furious about it all day. Anyway.
It also breaks, any illusion that the American media cares about our electorate, because how often have we been told that Russia influences our election, that China and Iran and Afghanistan influence our election, and now we have actual proof that there is a foreign nation that has influenced our election, and the media doesn't care at all. No government official cares at all. It's okay. It's A-okay. This money, these bots, this influence campaign came in to influence a campaign. There's no other way to see it, and it was effective. So, okay, where's the outrage? Where's the legislation?
Well, and the influencers, the so-called MAGA influencers, I call them the Epstein binder crowd, that didn't disclose like what money they've received from foreign lobbies, and were out there shilling to try to bring down reading almost from the same talking points, trying to bring down Thomas Massie. Like, where's the accountability on that? Where's like the investigative journalism on that to expose these frauds? Because you see it on cable news. You know exactly who they were in the tank for on cable news. They reluctantly at the last moment, finally yesterday, had Massie on. Yeah. Like Bill Hemmer's show finally had Massie on before the election. Like he'd been stonewalled and blackballed and they wouldn't allow, but they had Ed Gelrain on there. No problem. Anyway, it's all one big joke.
Heroic.
And I just think, you hear like David Icke's voice in the back of my head. You hear Colonel Towner Watkins in the back of your head when you're thinking about, we're going to rally around Democrats. Shut up. You're going to rally around this cult of personality with this guy now? Stop it. They're not coming to save you. They're all bought and paid for. And we need to burn the system down. That's how I feel about it. I'm furious. Go back to our roots in this country. When's the last time in this country, by the way, we've had like a real election? Would you have to go back maybe 170 years where there wasn't meddling involved in the election? I don't know. I'd be curious.
And low participation rates are emblematic of the fact that most of us get it, that they are all assholes and it doesn't much matter. Unfortunately, Iran has higher participation rates in their elections than we do. What does that tell you? I
mean, think about, exactly. You're right about that. I mean, we have a notoriously low participation rate in the United States. Absolutely. And in 2024, when we were told it was record breaking, still upwards of 100 million Americans didn't vote. 100 million said, it's all corrupt. It's all rigged. I'm not voting. What does my vote matter in this mess? Anyway.
Well, and I track it back to the voting machines, because if you look at the Bush election, that's the first time in U.S. history that the exit polls were incorrect. Like, you could call an election. They always called elections by exit polls before that. And so it's the implementation of voting machines is when I think that it became more corrupt.
And so you can.
That's a good point, David.
And you can switch anything at the last moment. Oh, no, you need these 10,000 more mail-in ballots at the last minute. Fire them away. There you go, Ed.
All right, coming up, we're going to pivot and talk about how Russia and China, stronger than ever. We tried to hurt them. We're not really. We hurt ourselves. It's a classic example of what is it when you point the finger, you have four fingers pointed back, and that's basically what happened, where, you're being an idiot and then two friends go out to dinner, that they're moving on and you're stuck in the mud. That's where we are right now, America. At least we have each other. Before we get there, though, we're going to talk about our friends at American Financing, because summertime expenses are stacking up faster than ever. Pricey family vacations, air conditioning, energy prices. Oh my gosh, are we all just going to sweat our butts off? Camp fees, if you send your kids to camp, gas prices, looming tuition. For many of us, it feels like the only option is using a credit card, leaving you trapped in a cycle of high interest debt. Well, if you're a homeowner, American Financing has a way out. This isn't about shortcuts. It's a real strategic plan to reset your finances and reclaim your budget. At American Financing, they specialize in building plans tailored specifically to your goals. They look at your current debt and show you exactly how your home equity can work smarter for you. So imagine rolling that high interest debt into one simple, manageable payment. There's no upfront fees and no pressure, just honest advice from salary-based consultants. They save their customers an average of $800 a month. That's real breathing room. So start today, and you can even delay 2 mortgage payments. You can call them at 866-890-8434 or head on over to americanfinancing.net/redacted. One more time, that's americanfinancing.net/redacted. Well, the U.S. has managed to push two global powers closer than ever. I'm talking about Russia and China. They are now building one of the most powerful economic and strategic alliances outside of the Western Hemisphere. And Western leaders largely made it happen by trying to prevent it from happening. It's a classic example of what you resist persists, an evil plan backfiring. This week, President Putin met with Chinese President Xi Jinping, and the two signed a record number of agreements covering energy, finance, AI, transportation, manufacturing, and yes, military coordination. Amongst the biggest developments is a new pipeline infrastructure directing Russian energy permanently towards China and growing efforts to bypass the U.S. dollar in global trade. All of this comes as the Western world struggles with high energy prices, deindustrialization, debt, stagnant growth, the economic fallout from years of proxy wars and sanctions policy. So now the Russia-Chinese trade corridor is on track to become one of the most strategically important economic trade routes in the world. Now, what makes this even more remarkable is that if you compare it to President Trump's trip to China last week, you realize one set of deals is historic and growth-based. The other is diplomatic and transactional. So the deals that the U.S. made with China under President Trump were tariff pauses, trade concessions, agricultural purchases, efforts to stabilize, basically clean up the shit that we have created. But the Putin-Xi agreements go far beyond commerce. Russia and China are building long-term energy infrastructure, alternative financial systems outside of the U.S. dollar. One set of deals is about trade tensions. The other is about actually building a parallel economic order. So the Putin-Xi agreements can sort of be summarized like, let's redesign the global system so we no longer need the West at all. Joining us now to discuss is former State Department diplomat Jim Jotras, who has warned for years that U.S. foreign policy was driving these two powers into a historic alliance. Jim, thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Natali, Clayton. I tell you, my head is still spinning from your discussion about American politics and Massie and all the giddy optimism that you expressed during that discussion. But I think, there's a silver lining that I think a lot of Americans are waking up, that they're not going to participate in the system. Like Clayton says, it's going to have to burn down. And the good news, if you want to call it that, is the way Trump is tanking the global economy with his misguided war in Iran. That's probably on the horizon, and we'll have to see what comes from the ashes.
So what do you think of Chinese President Xi Jinping and Putin getting together? I mean, you got to think that they get in a room and they're like, that guy over there, he's, going down with the ship. Meanwhile, let's build. I mean, do I have the read on that correctly?
I think that's more or less correct. And of course, you talked about, the alternatives to the Western-based financial system and so on and so forth. avoiding the sea lanes the United States can interdict. So that's why they're expanding energy cooperation with Russian exports to China and so forth. I think the real question mark is to what extent the Russians and the Chinese still feel they're invested in the dollar-denominated international system as it stands now, that they still are hoping against hope that the United States can be persuaded to a step down, to a decline of our ambitions for a global unipolar power, and will accept a multipolar order. If you look at the communique issued by the joint statement issued by the two presidents, they're clearly hoping for that kind of future. I don't think they've quite figured out, though, whether or not the United States can be persuaded to do that. I don't think we can, but I don't think they've come to that realization necessarily.
And so can you speak to these agreements that now Russia has with China? They also are celebrating the 25th anniversary of the Treaty of Good Neighborliness, Friendship, and Cooperation. And they're saying this is a good example of truly comprehensive partnership and strategic interaction. Are we capable of doing anything like that?
No, we can't. And I'm sure you've heard from many contexts where there's a diplomatic discussion that goes on, and the other side comes in with a bunch of experts and pages of documents and stats and proposals, and the Americans come in with what? Kushner and Witkoff shooting from the hip. I mean, that's unfortunately the way we conduct business these days, actually literally business. Somebody is making a lot of money somewhere on the American side, but I don't think it's the kind of money that's going to benefit the United States or our national security or the welfare of the American people.
What does this mean for the U.S. dollar? At the heart of it, of course, in the heart of this, one of their big discussion points, as Natali pointed out, was this multipolar cooperation. The sovereignty of Russia, the sovereignty of China, free to transact financially in the way that they see fit, make trade deals together. This is an end around to the U.S. dollar. Settle transactions in the yuan, settle transactions in the Russian ruble, outside of the U.S. petrodollar system. This, to me, when it was already on a decline, seems, maybe I'm being hyperbolic, but this seems to be maybe a final nail in a coffin for the U.S. dollar.
I guess to close a coffin properly, you need a number of nails. I'm not sure this is the final one. I mean, people have been predicting the decline of the dollar. You know, the yuan, the redback's going to replace the greenback, or whatever other currency is going to come out from BRICS. And so far, it hasn't happened yet. And I don't know if that's because they still can't quite get their act together on their side, or whether they're still hoping that somehow they can entice us to, wake up in the morning and smell the kvass or whatever they're drinking over there and see reason and join them in a more productive enterprise than what we've been conducting over the past few decades. I think that's really, let's face it. I mean, we're all used to the idea that Washington is controlled with corrupt interests that don't represent the national interests of the United States. But we like to think, but the Russians and the Chinese, they've got this pristine view of national interest. Well, I hate to tell people, they've got corrupt interests too. And there are going to be people over there who are going to be making short-term deals for their own benefit, not necessarily for Russia's benefit or China's benefit. So I think they're inching in that direction. I don't think they're there yet.
What about the Iran question?
I think that is the big question at the moment. Obviously, it involves the Iranians as well. I think one thing that the Russians, the Chinese, and the Iranians are very loath to admit to themselves is that the United States is really not agreement capable, that even if the United States were to come to the Iranians, or for that matter to the Russians and Ukraine, and say, fine, we will meet all your conditions. We'll run up the white flag. We'll accept everything you say, that the United States cannot be counted on to actually honor any of those commitments. Like, for example, in the case of Iran, if we say, okay, fine, you control the Straits of Hormuz, we'll pull back from our bases, we'll lift our sanctions against you. Would we actually follow through with that? I mean, for example, I can't see that we would ever lift sanctions on Iran in the foreseeable future, no matter what promises Trump made. So that's part of the problem we have. Again, I'm not sure the Russians, the Chinese, or the Iranians will admit that to themselves. At the same time, I think the Russians and the Chinese, rather than looking at the situation in Iran where Trump has caught his, mammary gland caught in the ringer there, that this is an opportunity to bring down the American empire. And instead, they're looking at a way to give Trump an off ramp and a deal, which will simply turn out to be a kind of a Minsk type deception.
Now, what about military cooperation? Because the two countries did, in fact, discuss military. They already have that, but it could be quite formidable. We've seen how powerful the Russians are and their military strategic mission in Ukraine right now. Play this out. How serious could this be?
Well, of course, Russia is the stronger military power. They're the ones with a much bigger nuclear arsenal. They're also the ones that are engaged in a hot war in Ukraine right now, obviously, and have this has been a paradigm changing war in terms of military technology. And there's only two countries that really have direct experience in that, and that's Russia and Ukraine. And you can imagine, just like with many other wars, like all the European powers sent observers to the American Civil War to see what was going on in military technology then, you can imagine the Chinese are very, very interested in gaining some of that technical knowledge and experience that the Russians have gained during this war. I did see a report that a number of Russian specialists were in China for joint training missions. I don't think the Chinese were training the Russians. I think the Russians were training the Chinese, saying, this is what we have learned in the course of this war, drone warfare and all the rest of it. And the Chinese are eating this up, especially since they have the military technical base and the industrial base to build on that, and we don't.
Europe. Obviously, we're seeing the rise of Germany, the militarization of Germany, moving towards a wartime economy now in Europe. And it seems to be inevitable that Europe wants to go to war with Russia. I don't see any way around it at this point. I just look at France, look at what the UK is doing, look at what Germany is doing, moving towards this militarization against Russia. Is there a way around it? And where do you see, obviously, this partnership between China and Russia playing out, given a coming Western war, it seems, against Russia?
For my Russian friends, I have different assessments of this. Some of them still are drinking the Kool-Aid, the spirit of Anchorage, and somehow Trump is still going to be able to work out a deal with them. But those Europeans, those are the real problem. And others realize, and I think this is where I tend to agree with them, that there's a lot less daylight between Washington and the Europeans than people think. That early on in the Trump administration, Mr. Hegseth said, we're going to try to dump this whole thing onto the Europeans, let them carry the burden for this war while we move on to the Russians and the Chinese and the Iranians. I think that's what's really going on. This is division of labor. The Europeans are stepping up to the plate because Washington wants them to. I have real doubts whether they can do that. There was a poll last year saying only 16% of Germans would fight to defend Germany, even if Germany were invaded. How many of them have an appetite for going to war anywhere in Russia or Ukraine? I mean, I hate to sound intolerant, but I don't think the gay Europeans are in a position to fight against anybody, given the state of their society, given the migrant invasion, given the fact that their industry is falling apart without cheap Russian energy. I mean, what are they going to do? Ask the Russians to turn the gas back on so we can make more weapons to fight you with? I mean, that's not going to work out very well either. I think these countries are making lots and lots of noise, but they're not in a position to fight a war. I don't think industrial, materially, spiritually, morally, they're in a position to do any of that. I think the Russians are overestimating that as a problem, which is why, and one reason I think, in my opinion, they're making a big mistake in not finishing off this war in Ukraine sooner rather than later, which many more voices in Russia are calling for, because, well, we have to wait for the big war against the Europeans in the future. Well, if they want to avoid that war, I think it's best to finish this now rather than give the Europeans time to ramp up, assuming they're even capable of doing that.
They're not. In Portugal, they're paying almost $10 a gallon right now for gas. Where are they going to? They're not. I'm with you on this. I want to ask you one more thing about President Putin, because he is facing a growing backlash inside Russia for his inability to end the war in Ukraine. And, I guess he had strong support when the military operation began, but now we're several years into it. Russians are tired of it. The Ukrainians keep playing dirty. Relying on Western diplomacy has proven to be a trapdoor. So what of his political prospects right now and the Russian appetite for continued conflict?
Well, I don't think it's an inability to win the war. I think it's a deliberate decision not to win the war. I think,
Yes.
again, their whole approach, the Russians are practitioners of classic statecraft. So are the Chinese, by the way. And I think they only think in terms of, and they have from the beginning, of a settlement at the end. You force the enemy to agree to your terms. Okay, fine, fine. We'll cry uncle. We'll agree to your terms. I think that's what they've been thinking of all along, and their terms are still very moderate. The same terms that Mr. Putin laid out in June of 2024, the four oblasts, Crimea agreements on no NATO, neutrality, denazification, demilitarization. The problem is, as I said earlier, even if the West agreed to those terms, none of those terms would be honored. How do you insist on denazification or demilitarization if the Russian army is not in control of Kiev? So if there look, I'm not going to mention names, but I even have friends. They say, well, they want binding treaty guarantees. What good is a treaty guarantee with the United States? We don't. Mr. Trump says we don't agree with treaties. We just have my own morality as a guide. So I think they're barking up the wrong tree. They don't want to recognize that the only solution is a military one and really involves the destruction of the Ukrainian state. When you have people like now Mr. Karaganov talking about striking targets in Western Europe, even using nuclear weapons, I sometimes wonder, don't the Russians have a medium speed between holding back, being cautious, hoping for an agreement, and, oh, wait, that didn't work. I guess we better drop some nukes on them. I mean, why have they not taken out the leadership in Kiev? Why have they not destroyed the bridges over the Dnieper so the Ukrainian army can't be supplied? I've asked these questions many, many times over the last few years of various Russian interlocutors, and they can't give me an answer that makes any sense to them either.
Yeah, there is absolute frustration. And speaking to Russians yesterday on our show, the very same thing, that there is a level of a deep frustration or how this thing gets dragged out. And then 2 million, upwards of 2 million Ukrainians dead. And a lot of these mercenaries on the battlefield now are French, they're Poles, they're Colombians. How many more times do we have to see videos now of people that aren't even, Ukrainian are having to pick it up and continue this bloody nonsense? It's deeply disgusting as all of this money continues to flow in. Jim, great to see you as always. Thank you so much for your invaluable insights. Really appreciate it. And thanks for always kind of walking us off a cliff, or pulling us back from a cliff, not walking us off a cliff.
He's stopping us.
I like the way you said it the first time. Let's go off the cliff together. We can make it a throuple.
It's a Thelma and Louise moment.
Yeah.
Let's go.
Oh my gosh.
There we go.
Okay.
Honor
Thanks,
and
Jim.
pleasure as always. Thank you.
Thanks, Jim.
Clayton, come back off the cliff. We have a show to do.
Well, I was just thinking about him saying about, the nail in the coffin for the U.S. dollar. And, we're now about a 40%, I think, saturation rate for the U.S. dollar. And so he's right. We keep hearing about the death of the U.S. dollar. It's not going to happen like overnight where tomorrow morning you're going to wake up and it's dead. Someone put some flowers there, but on the gravestone. But it is a slow decline. So it's just another nail in that continued coffin. But if you're going to be settling transactions outside the U.S. dollar and creating all sorts of trade infrastructure, oil deals, gas deals, where you're not using the U.S. dollar at all.
Yeah.
All right.
So we're going to die like one of those elephants that you see on Discovery Channel, just standing in the mud. It's going to be awful.
Like Atreyu.
Yeah.
Or what's his name?
Falcor. Yeah,
Artax.
Artax.
No,
Oh, yeah.
Artax.
Oh, yeah. Artax. Thank you.
Never ending.
Don't get me started.
Yeah.
Artax. No, Artax. All right. Coming up on the show, we are going to talk about Epstein's connections to the Obama administration and being a crypto advisor in a way. That's just one little tease for you about what is actually going on. A stunning new investigation from Dropside News and Epstein's involvement with the Obama administration and cryptocurrency. We'll talk about that. But first, I need to tell you about snacking, because I love a good snack and I like chips. I've tried them all. I think there's not a chip in the world that I haven't tried and eaten. Bad ones, good ones. And I'm proud to say I'm a huge fan of Masa chips, because they are some of the cleanest, best chips, best for you snacks that you're gonna try. They don't. Most of these chips taste like cardboard, or they're gonna sneak in ingredients that you don't want. Masa is the first chip that, well, guess what? Has 3 ingredients: beef tallow, corn, and salt. That's it. 100% grass-fed beef tallow. So it's crunchy, and they don't have 40 ingredients like a lot of these other chips out there. See the ones on the left up there, the white ones? Those are my favorites. They kind of taste like when you go to a Mexican restaurant and you get those chips they bring out with the salsa. That's kind of how the white ones taste to me. They're kind of like lighter and a little fluffier, and they hold that salsa fantastic. And you don't feel like bloated or anything and feel like, oh my God, I just ate a whole bag of seed oils, because there's no seed oils in them. So that's the beauty of masa chips. Snacking on masa chips is nothing like eating regular chips. You feel satisfied, light, energetic, no crash, no bloat. Personally, I love the white ones, but you might also try the lime ones, the habanero. There's a churro one that my son loves. He loves like the dessert ones, the churro ones. Of course he likes the dessert ones. Anyway, go to masachips.com/redactednews and use the code redactednews for 25% off your first order. And guess what? You also can go to your local Sprouts supermarket if you want to grab them too, like if you just want to show up and grab them. But anyway, go to masachips.com/redactednews for 25% off your first order, or scan that QR code right there on your screen.
Well, a stunning new investigation from DropSite News reveals that Jeffrey Epstein advised the Obama administration about cryptocurrency while the White House was negotiating the nuclear deal with Iran. Here is the story. I encourage you to read it. According to the report, Treasury officials consulted Epstein about Bitcoin, sanctions evasions, terrorism financing, and the future of digital currency as the administration tried to tighten pressure on Tehran during the nuclear talks. Now, think about how extraordinary this is. This is during the Obama years. Jeffrey Epstein has already been convicted as a sex offender, and he's welcomed with open arms by White House counsel, the Treasury, other globalist elites, political elites. How does this happen? This wasn't a man exiled from power after his conviction. He was still moving comfortably inside the highest levels of government and finance in the Obama White House. The investigation also reveals that Epstein met with senior Obama officials connected to the Iran negotiations, again, while simultaneously heavily invested in blockchain technology, cultivating relationships throughout the emerging cryptocurrency world. Joining us now is one of the authors of this report, Murtaza Hussain. Thank you so much for joining us. It's shocking. I mean, you can't really say like, oh, Obama, he's not in the Epstein files. No, a lot of his administration was. Can you explain this?
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys. And thanks for highlighting the story. So, yeah, it's very interesting because people often talk about Epstein's political role and his associations. Very interestingly, his associations, for most of his life at least, were very predominantly on the more centrist liberal side of the political equation. And that was internationally to a degree. It was the Democratic Party in the US, the Labour Party in Israel, and the Labour Party at that time in the UK. So that was his sort of nexus. It went far beyond that, but that was kind of where he predominated. So this story talks a lot about his communications and ties with the U.S. Treasury Department during the Obama administration. And to your point, this was many years after his first conviction for crimes against minors, sex crimes. He was being brought to the Treasury Department, solicited by the Treasury Department for meetings and briefings to help them understand the role and implications of cryptocurrency and Bitcoin in particular. At the time, his emails suggest and the meetings suggest that they looked to him as somebody who had more knowledge about the subject than they did in-house, which is really a profound implication because, he was a private citizen and this is a major government agency. This was relatively in the infancy of cryptocurrency. And one thing about Epstein, and this also comes across in his emails quite a bit, and no one's really covered it, is that he had a lot of personal connections and interest and involvement in developing some of the core infrastructure of the then nascent world of cryptocurrency and Bitcoin. He was very close with many people who were, the core developers of Bitcoin in the years after its creation as well, too. So, he was somebody who was at the frontier of many technologies, and there's reasons that he took that interest. But it was such that the U.S. government was soliciting him. And it wasn't just the Treasury Department. He was meeting with senior CIA officials who were involved in the nuclear talks with Iran at that time. And he was basically, his sex crimes and his convictions were not really seen by anybody, as far as we can tell, as an impediment. He was just viewed as a very powerful, influential figure whom the government itself was relying on for various things.
I once interviewed Joe Biden for an assignment, and I had to have a full background check just to get in that room to sit with the vice president. It was a job that was sponsored by Microsoft at the time. And they couldn't do a background check on the makeup artist, so she couldn't get inside the door, right? And so I had to do it myself. How does someone like me who just sat with Joe Biden for 20 minutes have to go through that and they can't see that Epstein has a sex conviction and he gets all of these doors? I don't understand. They had to have known.
Or they saw it and
it's
they
not
didn't care.
possible that they didn't catch this.
Well, it's interesting because, an ordinary person like me or you or people watching this, they would have to go through more stringent background checks or scrutiny before they're solicited or by the U.S. government for this kind of work or even met with in these channels. It seems that Epstein's influence and power and networks were such that he could supersede these normal checks and balances. And people viewed the benefit of association with him as overriding any concerns they may or may not have had with his personal behavior, which really were quite well known even beyond his conviction. So in this situation, it's very interesting because a lot of our reporting is based, and this story is based on publicly available documents, which are released as part of the Epstein's estate, but also as part of the government disclosures regarding the Epstein files. But there hasn't really been much coverage of this. There's been tremendous coverage, rightly so, of his sex crimes and his associations with powerful people in some cases, but not about his political and intelligence activities, his contacts with senior intelligence officials in the U.S. and Israel and other countries, and also something we've been covering quite a bit, his contacts with people who are at the cutting edge of frontier development of certain technologies, including biotechnology, human modification, cryptocurrency, and artificial intelligence. He was somebody who was plugged into those networks, funding many of these scientists as well, too. And this is the part of the Epstein story, which I think is very, very important. The nexus between elite philanthropic networks, government, science, and the finance world. That was something that Epstein bridged in his person. And again, if you weren't reading Dropside or watching Redacted, you may not hear about any of this in the establishment media. And that's really the interesting part of it.
Well, it continues, right? So Peter Thiel, Jason Calacanis, some of the names you talk about in this piece and their connections between Epstein and these individuals has been strong. And of course, since his death, they've continued. So can you talk about some of this infrastructure that with Epstein's death has continued, particularly Peter Thiel, but also like Jason Calacanis?
This is a really important point because, Jeffrey Epstein died in 2019, and that's quite a while ago now. We're coming up on 7 years since his death. And clearly from his emails, you can see that he was an important node in this transnational network of very wealthy individuals spanning different industries and different roles in government and the private sector. He was this connective tissue who, public officials, senior public officials around the world would rely on him for arranging their back channel talks with other governments or with people in the private sector like Peter Thiel and Jason Calacanis and individuals like this, oligarchs and so forth. He was the person that they needed who had more influence and power than they did, and they needed him to do that. But, he's died a long time ago, relatively, and that network we're talking about spanning all these people, there's never really been any accountability for it. In the U.S., no one's really been charged or gone to jail for anything in the Epstein files regarding the sex abuses or the other, evident corruption and backroom dealing that's taking place in these emails. So I think it's a very interesting question, and who is playing Epstein's role today? How has that network evolved or adapted? What is it doing today? And I think that this is a broader story that we haven't really gotten the language to diagnose it yet, although we're starting to make strides towards that, is that in the present day, it seems like power has migrated from government agencies or public institutions that we have some insight over into these shadowy networks of private capital and private individuals who are more powerful than states, and of whom Jeffrey Epstein was a member during his lifetime. And they're still there, and they're still operating. And we're getting upset with the government or upset with institutions we can see for not being powerless or unable to effectuate change. Meanwhile, these oligarchs who Epstein was embedded with. They're making moves, and they have the ability to act far more efficiently. So that's why I'm encouraged by the emergence and popularization of the term the Epstein class, because that kind of stabs at what we're talking about here.
Oh, I got yelled at yesterday. I got yelled at yesterday online by some tool bag because I said Massie's loss last night is a win for the Epstein class. And a person yelled at me and said that this is just a dog whistle. What you're saying is it's just a Jew whistle. You should know better than to say that's the cover. It's a dog whistle for anti-Semitism to call them the Epstein class. What do you say to that?
Oh, well, the term was first popularized by John Ossoff, who himself is of Jewish background. So it's really not the people sometimes use accusations of racism or their various types to suppress legitimate political discussion. In this case, we're talking about a oligarchy class who spans people of many different backgrounds, many different countries, but who are united in sort of this project of accumulation of private capital at the expense of the public. And I would say very, very strongly degrading democratic accountability institutions in the United States and elsewhere, such that they can continue these activities with impunity. And again, it's kind of amazing that in the U.S. there's not been any legal accountability for what's been revealed in the Epstein files, for instance. It seems that people who were part of this oligarchy have realized that they can kind of do what they want without scrutiny, and that's what we're talking about, the Epstein class. This people whose names show up in here, people who may be one degree of separation away from the people who are in here, who are profoundly powerful and profoundly wealthy, and they continue accumulating wealth over this time. So it's not about an ethnicity or religion or anything like that. It's about, basically fairness and democracy and fighting against oligarchy for the benefits of the American people and many people around the world who are suffering from this. So Epstein is such a good symbol because he was such a morally objectionable individual, but he was not alone. And that people like that are still existing. And it's not surprising me you engage in sex abuses, because if you have so much impunity, you tend to go off the rails entirely. And that's what you see in his emails, not just his own behavior, but those of his associates around the world.
Right. And so I'm trying to figure out as I read this, what is Epstein's interest in cryptocurrency? It seems like because he was so involved in the Iran-Contra deal, he's interested in a currency exchange that's untraceable so that he could continue his nefarious deeds. And when I'm saying Epstein, obviously his interest represents the Epstein class. So there are people who still have an interest in it in this way. But he was very much like, ooh, you got to be careful, though, because... And what do you think then the Epstein class would still think about cryptocurrency for their what bad uses?
Yeah, so, as you point out, Jeffrey Epstein's emergence was really in the period of Iran-Contra. And we had a story about this some months ago at Dropsite, which, again, is not really, this aspect of Epstein's life has not really been covered, although it's all publicly available for the most part in documents. But Iran-Contra was an episode, obviously, of arms and drug smuggling, but also, as importantly, or more importantly, about the covert movement and storage of illicit funds. So at that time, it was very important to know people who are adept at money laundering, who can hide illicit funds and create black budgets and so forth. And that was what Epstein's sort of original you could say a core competency was. So throughout his life, he continued to play that role, among other roles, as somebody who was capable and fascinated with the ability to hide money and move money in different ways. So, at this point, in the late 2010s, the emergence of Bitcoin, many people, including myself at the time and others, we were very interested in the emergence of Bitcoin because, there was the global financial crisis, which it was created in response to ostensibly. And the impact of censorship and sanctions and all these things as a tool of political control, economic sanctions. So Bitcoin seemingly offered a way, and cryptocurrency in general offered a way to circumvent that or to get around that. But also, people took an interest in it who, or maybe you could say were embedded in the previous system as well, but saw this technology as a new way of doing more of the same. And the same corruption that was taking place on Wall Street could be amplified if you have a good lead into this emerging technology. And Epstein, for what you can say about him, he was a very intelligent person in the sense that he had a very keen sense of where power came from. And he knew that one way to ascertain the direction of power in the future was to see the direction of technology. So that's why he surrounded himself with scientists of various types. And at that time, many cryptography researchers and data scientists, computer scientists were very interested in blockchain and what it represented and what it could do. And he wanted to be keen on that. He wanted to be, aware of it. He funded the emergence of some cryptocurrencies. Researchers he was funding and supporting, that's in our story as well too, had deep personal associations with people who were core developers of various cryptocurrencies, including Bitcoin. And his knowledge was such that, again, it exceeded that of the government at the time. And one thing our story notes is that by around this time, 2014, when he's briefing the Treasury Department, Bitcoin had existed for a few years, but it was only starting to be used as a tool of the geopolitical statecraft. And countries which are subjected to sanctions were starting to use Bitcoin to move money outside the U.S. sanctions regime. And also there was the emergence of the Silk Road, which was being used to buy and sell drugs and other things online using Bitcoin. So, Epstein was in the small category of people at the time who'd known about Bitcoin for many years, who'd been deeply invested and involved in it. And the Treasury Department was very behind the curve. So they really wanted to know from somebody who could explain this in great detail. And again, who did they call up? Jeffrey Epstein, to give briefings and to debrief about this technology. And this is only one thing he had displayed at that time. It was quite remarkable, but he was somebody who was plugged in and ahead of the curve again of this technology and many others around that time.
All right. I mean, again, since our government won't give us answers, we can assume that a Jeffrey Epstein type person is still doing this, is still trying to pervert the global system to their will.
Yeah, and it's really funny because we theoretically have had all this transparency about Jeffrey Epstein, but as you notice, we haven't really at all. There have not been any public inquiries per se. The Epstein files they released are very partial and so forth, and released in a way which is deliberately, I would say, obfuscating what's really in them. The press has been mostly absent, and it's been really treated just as a limited hangout, in my opinion. It's just been tremendous coverage of a certain aspect of his life, and then ignoring the huge elephant in the room, which was his role as a political actor, as someone embedded in intelligence networks, oligarchic networks. And it's because the same establishment media outlets, which in theory are supposed to cover this kind of thing, and public institutions are supposed to deal with it, they are compromised by the same oligarchic networks, so they can't really cover it. So it's really fallen upon independent media, smaller outlets like Redacted or Dropsite News and so forth, to pay attention to it. And the information's out there. It's publicly out there and verified. It's merely the fact that they're trying to evade public reckoning with it. And I think if the public was more aware of what's in these files, if they were laid out to them in a way which did clarify what the implications were, which we're trying to do with our reporting, there would be tremendous public backlash and there'd be anger, even more so than there are today about the Epstein files, because it really does show a profound corruption, and of which Epstein was not merely an agent, but he's also a product of a broader system which is still operating.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for this report. I want to encourage everybody to read it. Dropsite News, you guys are doing incredible reporting, so stick with them as well. Thanks for your time. It's great to talk to you.
Thanks. Good to see you guys again.
Great seeing you.
All right. Well, let us know what you think of that. No doubt it is pervasive. So, what do you think?
It is. And I loved his point about the Epstein class too, because like the idea that the person that coined that term is Jewish, Senator John Ossoff, this idea that there's an elite pedophile class inside of Washington, D.C., regardless of party. Like it's not some sort of a Jewish dog whistle. Yeah. It really represents this dirty, to your question, like group that's still existing outside of an Epstein name. Like it's still operating just because Epstein's not involved in it anymore.
Right.
And he's not he's not the face or name of it. It's just disintermediated now. And it's flowing through these tech oligarchs. It's flowing in a different way now.
Yeah.
Through this technocracy, which has total control over Washington, D.C. So anyway.
Well, coming up, we're going to talk about the Patriot crisis. What does it mean now to represent America first? We're going to talk to Clint Russell about that from the Liberty Logpad YouTube channel. And we're going to try to be positive, guys. I mean, look at Clayton. He is glass half full today. You are the poster child of enthusiasm.
Can I just read you? I'll just read you a message I just got from a friend of the show, Tucker Carlson. Can I just read this? I'm not going to put it up on the air, but just, he said there is a positive sign here that basically now that you have, maybe I shouldn't share this because this is like a private message, but maybe
I was wondering about that.
Maybe he'll share it on his live show today, but basically he said, I'm not as down in the dumps as I thought I would be, because there are some positive signs now that people are awakening, because there's been so much attention paid to this massive Israel lobby that, Massie basically saying that I refuse to take funding from people who are supporting a genocide, and I'm refusing to send American dollars to support a genocide. And then you have like people like AIPAC, like openly bragging online in tweets that they took him out, like this group that supports that. So we'll see if Americans are awakening. What do you think, Philip?
Well, and I think that what they're doing, and whether they realize it or not, and I would assume that they don't, is both like the extreme right and the extreme left are waking up the middle, and there's far more of those people that are in the middle. Because I look at something, like I had a conversation with my daughter last night, and like by all accounts, like she should very much be like a Portland liberal, but she's not, and she's definitely not like part of the MAGA crowd. She's part of the crowd that's awake and sees what is going on and sees it for what it is. Mm-hmm. And those are the people that like there's literally more of in this country than anybody else.
Yeah,
I think
don't
you're
make
right
us
about
like
that.
each other.
I think you're right about that. And I think that was at the heart of why they killed Charlie Kirk. Those were the people that were showing up and having discussions and saying, wait a minute, we're not like blue-haired freaky liberals, like we want to have abortions every week and everything. Portland liberals, to your point. And we're also not like MAGA,
like
MAGA neocons. Chest thumping neocons. Like we're somehow in the middle here having discussions with Charlie Kirk. That's why they had to assassinate him. I think there's a lot more people like that. And that's why, friend of the show, Colonel Towner Watkins, says they wanted to create this strategy of tension. That's why they killed Charlie Kirk. Mm-hmm. They can't have people like your daughter in that middle spot because that takes away their chaos. I don't know. I'm trying to be positive.
All right. Well, maybe you need to sit this next one out because we're going to talk about how to be positive, and you need to go give yourself a pep talk. Go slap your cheeks in the corner for a second. And then, but first, you're going to first do a sponsor, and then you can go splash some cold water.
Okay. All right. Can we talk about the most underrated organ in the body? You know what I'm talking about, guys. It's your liver. It's doing 500 plus functions every single day, filtering unwanted elements, supporting digestion, helping with energy. But we never think about it until something's wrong. What if we actually supported it before the problem started? When I told Natali that we got dose in the house, she said, I want to do that. I want to do a dose cleanse for my liver. So we're all trying to feel healthy, drinking more water, getting steps in, taking vitamins. But here's what most people miss: your liver health. It affects literally everything: your energy, digestion, how your skin looks, even your metabolism. It's time we show it some love. So right now, you need to take some dose for your liver. Dose for your liver is a clinically backed liver health supplement. This isn't just another capsule or a powder. It actually comes in a liquid form in bottles, delivered right to your house. It's taken in a twice daily shot. It's a little small, like really tiny little shot glass. They even send you the little shot glass. And you just take a little dose. It tastes like fresh squeezed orange juice. Take one little dose. It cleanses the liver of unwanted stressors that slow your liver down. It promotes daily liver function so your liver can do its job. Zero sugar, zero junk, 0 calories in this dose, by the way, as well. It's got real results. 2 double-blind placebo-controlled studies show that it's positive impact on liver enzyme levels. So right now, if you're ready to give your liver the support it deserves, head over to dosedaily.co, not .com, it's .co. So dosedaily.co/redacted, or enter the code redacted to get 35% off your first subscription. Your body does so much for you. Let's do something for it. That's dosedaily, dosedaily.co/redacted for 35% off your first month subscription.
Well, what happens next in American politics now that we know for sure that the donor class can win elections? Clint Russell is from the Liberty Lockdown YouTube show, and he warned months ago that if the Trump camp threw out Thomas Massie and everything he stood for, there would be a massive voter fallout because the Trump camp themselves on the campaign trail promised Epstein disclosures, prosecutions of the Epstein class, small government, no foreign wars. And then they ran out the one guy who voted consistently that way. So what now? I invited Clint on the show not to have a bitch fest, although that is very tempting. I want to talk about what happens next. You made a great point on your show last night that we can't really blame the boomers and Fox News, even though they obviously were complicit in thwarting the will of the people. It's the influencer class that is coming up to replace Fox News. So what do we do with this? So maybe you can give me a little postmortem, and then what now?
Well, thank you for having me, Natalie. Look, this was obviously a potentiality. We knew that going against the AIPAC lobby, going against the RJC, going against Miriam Adelson puts you in harm's way. We can talk about Charlie Kirk if you want to go down that path. But I think that Massie, he made his bed, and most of us thought that there was a good chance that he could survive lying in it, and he couldn't. So, but it took double the most spending that has ever happened in a primary race in American history. So that tells you something. This guy was very, very popular. The grassroots network was incredibly profound. Thousands, tens of thousands of small donations from across the country competing against 3 billionaires, 2 of which with overt Zionist leanings. So it was truly the people versus the donor class or the oligarchs, or however you want to frame it. And they came out on top. But I think it's a Pyrrhic victory. Honestly, I do. I think that they're going to lose this war. I think that if you look at the voting breakdown and you see that the only voter block that Ed Gallarain won was 65 and older. That's the only one. And he won it in a landslide. But it is the Fox News, sorry, OAN, sorry, all of the kind of conventional mainstream right-wing news that is also under Zionist influence. That is the only demographic that bought this nonsense. That's the only ones. Everybody else. So at most, you've got a decade. At most. And I think that the midterms are going to be an absolute all-out bloodbath. I was very hesitant to get on board with Nick Fuentes' whole burn it all down program. But now that Laura Loomer is signaling that the next victim in their line of fire is Rand Paul, I'm on board. I say we nuke the entire GOP. That's where I'm at with it.
And so you would consider voting Democrat in order to punish them?
All I'm saying is I will not vote for any conventional GOP rep at this point. None of them. If you didn't defend Massie, if you're not vocally in support of him, I want nothing to do with you. He represents the Constitution. He represents Ron Paul. He represents the small L libertarians. He represents the founding fathers. He represents two-way and free speech and non-intervention and everything that makes this country great. Everything. So if you couldn't voice support for him, I want nothing to do with you. And just to circle back to your earlier point about the influencer class, this is the other thing I laid out on my show, and I've made this explicit and laid it out in detail in prior episodes of Liberty Lockdown. But the truth is that there are pay-to-post campaigns that are just everywhere. They are everywhere. They're on Instagram. They're on X. They're on TikTok. They're everywhere you can possibly imagine. So when people think about how elections get bought and presidents get bought and congressional and Senate seats get bought, they oftentimes stop there. Or maybe they'll even go to corporate news is bought, right? But they stop there. They still think that there is organic stuff happening. And there is some organic stuff happening, but they still think that there is organic opinions being generated from the highest level of the scare quotes independent media. These people are not independent. A good example of this is Matt Walsh. Matt Walsh was vocally in support of Thomas Massie for a very long time. And then when the rubber meets the road, when Trump has laid down the gauntlet, when Miriam Adelson has her attack dogs circling him like a fallen child in the Epstein network, where is Matt Walsh? Nowhere to be seen. Yeah. He toes the company line. He starts to sound exactly like Ben Shapiro. Michael Knowles does the same thing. These people
all
are
of
frauds.
TPUSA. Yeah, they're not trying to carry on Charlie's legacy. Charlie was in line with Thomas Massie, a great supporter of independent
His favorite
thought.
congressman.
Yeah. And so where were those guys? I mean, if you need any other proof that TPUSA is not a grassroots movement is not independent thinking, is neither of those things. It's really disappointing. But do you think that this influencer class is as powerful as Fox News has been for the boomers?
Well, not for the boomers, no. But
I mean to who their audience, like, are they equivalent? It's an SAT question. Is X to Y, right?
Yes. Thank you. I just woke up. Yeah, look, are they? I think that I don't know if they're comparably influential, but they are very, very close. And what makes them particularly deadly is that they present themselves to be something different. They are not supposed to be Sean Hannity, right? They're supposed to be like reflective of the grassroots. They're supposed to be reflective of the youth movement in this country. They're none of those things. They are hired guns, just like Sean Hannity with his CIA lapel pin. Like, that's what they actually are. But what makes them so dangerous is that they represent themselves to not be that. And they have a lot of people convinced that they aren't that. So I think that's the red pilling, that the next evolution of red pilling is that, yes, they are not on network news. Yes, they present themselves to be something different. They are not. And I think more and more people are coming to that realization. And I think that it requires the few of us that are in this world, that are independent voices, that actually aren't bought and paid for, which I believe you guys are. I'm not. I had a handful of people like Dave Smith, my Ian Carroll, my small network of folks that I actually believe in. Those are the people that I rely on. And I think that it's incumbent upon all of us that are truly independent to call out those that are paid propagandists, that they are attack dogs. They're mercenaries. They are literally mercenaries. They are political mercenaries in this country. And it's time that they get put on notice, because their influence is very significant. It really is. They wouldn't be paying them if they weren't.
I mean, all we have to do as the litmus test is, are you consistent in your policies? We have consistently been anti-war. We have consistently been free speech, and we have consistently been against foreign intervention in other places. And so, you don't have to have a following to me or to Redacted or to you. You have to have a following to your consistent principles. And the amount of people who were not that and followed Trump and made a hard left to foreign war, I find that so unforgivable. And I don't understand. I just can't understand, because these are the same voices online that promised us during the Biden administration that anti-war was a consistent principle. It was only to win the election, I guess. They didn't mean it. And that's why I feel such bile in my stomach over it.
Me too.
And so, I felt really strongly about voting against Democrats in 2024, but I don't want to play villain rotation, where then I give the Democrats power because I feel so much hatred towards the GOP right now. So that's the vicious circle that we're in, right?
Yeah, no, that's exactly right. And just to, commiserate with you, the reason you can't wrap your head around this level of betrayal is because you're a good person.
That's nice of you to say.
It's the truth. I mean, this is really the divide in this country, is like, it's the good people with souls versus those that aren't. I mean, this is where you get into the Alex Jones, Tucker Carlson spiritual battle. We're up against demons, right? And I think that's actually what, if you want to get religious about it, that could be what this is. But the reason it's so hard for you to wrap your mind around is because you couldn't do that. You couldn't sleep at night. You couldn't take that money and then pay for a house and children and look yourself in the mirror every day. Like, you just couldn't do it, and neither could I. And I think that's
quite the opposite. We've lost a lot of audience for not being loyal to MAGA. We made it clear we were not in the MAGA camp. We were supporting the overthrow of the Democrat regime. And, we were independent thinkers. We had low expectations for Trump to end the war in Gaza, but thought he might make progress in Ukraine. And so because people sort of interpreted that as being aligned with MAGA, we lose viewers for that. And there's no way we can pander to that to keep our viewers and look our children in the eye.
Exactly right. But see, here's the thing is, it's a very short-sighted mentality and outlook to base your positions off of popularity in that moment. Like, what makes Ron Paul so special, such a historic figure, a guy whose speeches will resonate throughout history, is because he said unpopular truths when no one else had the courage to. And that's what creates movements. That's what creates history. That's what creates world-changing events. If you don't have that in you, you have no business even being in this game, in my opinion. You are an also-ran, bought and paid for mercenary, and you will vanish with the dustbin of history. I mean, you will not matter historically. So my opinion is that you need to be willing to sacrifice, because what you're doing, even if you lose, 10% of audience during this lull, right? You are actually trading out the people who are not free thinkers for those that are. You're trading out the unprincipled for those with principles. And also you're trading the old for the young. People get mad when I say that, but that's just absolutely the truth. The young people in this country absolutely know that what I'm saying is true, that we are awash in bought and paid for commentariat, and they are looking for independent voices. The reason Tucker Carlson is the biggest voice in the world right now on the right wing is because of that, because he bucked the corporate overlords and he started to tell the truth about a whole hell of a lot of things. So I think that, well, there may be short-term pain. It is both principle and ultimately the pathway to success. So I hope you guys stay with it. I know you will, because I've seen your spirit in this fight.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. And ditto, that's why I wanted to commiserate with you. But again, I'm trying to, I think this dark versus light, it makes me feel better because, but I don't know how, I'm struggling sort of existentially with how much stock to put in that. Is it just like the bad sometimes wins before the good? What is the, yeah. I don't know,
No, I think that's true though. I mean, not to get too spiritual with you. My dad died about 8 months ago, and I've been just spiraled into a religious awakening thanks to a really special time with him in the last 6 weeks of his life. So I'll just leave it at that. There's an episode I put out on October 6th, the night that he actually died, that I was in his hospital, and it explains it if people want the kind of miraculous description of everything. But
I did see it, and I thought it was beautiful. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much. So like once you go through that and you start to feel a connection to God, you also feel much more of a sense of purpose and alignment with like what you're supposed to be doing with your life. And I came out of that era, that period, just so recommitted and spiritually aligned and just energetic and kind of tireless. Like I just, like even after the loss last night, right? No one is a bigger Thomas Massie fan than me. like on the planet. I absolutely love this guy. He is this generation's Ron Paul in my view. But I, like within an hour of the news breaking that he had lost, I was already feeling more optimistic. I can't even really describe it other than to say exactly that. Like in the darkest moments, I still feel as if our victory is inevitable, that truth wins out, that light beats darkness. I guess I'm not going to be able to convince you of it. It's just a feeling, but I genuinely believe that. I think that the odds are stacked against us, and yet I 100 million% believe that we ultimately prevail in this fight. And if we don't, well, then I go out on my shield, and I'm happy with that either way.
Well, then that puts us now in the belly of the whale, if we're looking at the hero's journey, right? Because it's always like the darkest before the light, and then there's some kind of reimagine, like when the hero submerges from the belly of the whale, right, they come back and they have to reinvent society. They can't be like they were before. So that's possible. So I guess I want to ask you, I'll just end it on this. Do you think Thomas Massie has the ability to garner real power now? Because you and I both watched him introduce bills that went nowhere. Ask for support on things that we all wanted that Congress was able to ignore. So what could he do? It's a little early, but let's drink some enthusiasm juice. Like what could he do?
Well, look, like I said earlier, if you look at the demographics, it's 65 and up versus everybody else. And really the under 50 is like landslide in our direction. Now that's split between right and left wingers though. So let's just be clear, like we're not totally unified, far from it, but the youth in this country, and I just include anybody under 50 as the youth at this point. Yeah. they all want to put America first. They all recognize we don't have sovereignty. They all recognize we don't have electoral avenues to redress our grievances, that we don't have representation. Like, we are being taxed without representation. So that is the galvanizing moment or movement that could bring a Thomas Massie, Ro Khanna like figure to the top of the heap. And well, it seems far-fetched right now, and it may be far-fetched in the future. We'll see. But I think if there has ever been an opportunity for a third-party candidate, 2028 will be it, and Thomas Massie will be that guy.
Yeah.
Like, I believe that.
And I would like to say to anyone who might be a boomer who is rejecting this, I don't know why they'd be watching this, but I saw this thread in feminism is that, like, oh, the older generation didn't get it. Our moms weren't as wise as us. They were enslaved by a system, but they didn't know. And we know, and we're better than that. And what we lose in that kind of mentality is the ability to learn from the wisdom of a previous generation. I think that boomers do have wisdom to share with us if they are willing to break their allegiance to partisan politics. And I see this in my father, who wants to idolize certain GOP, brands, but, is not it. But when I say, but they did this, but this, he goes, well, there must have been a reason. You can still study. You can still look into that. You can still become a part of a movement. Old dogs can learn new tricks. It doesn't have to be this way. Generational garbage disposal. I don't like that.
Well, and look, you said, I don't know why they'd be watching. There's a lot of boomers watching us right now. I've got, I don't know, probably 10% of my audience is 65 plus. So like, that's a lot of people. So every time I make these claims, I just want to make it clear, I'm not talking about all you. Like, there's a bunch of you that are super red pilled and based as hell, and you absolutely recognize what time it is. Like, you guys are founding fathers type folks. So, but you also know that what we're saying right now is absolutely fucking true. that 80% of your demographic has no clue what's going on. They are completely brainwashed. They are completely zombified by both foreign lobbies as well as corporate America, as well as the duopoly. That's just the truth.
No, I meant the partisan loyalist boomers. Because we have a lot of boomers, too, that are absolutely red-pilled and have tons of wisdom. And I'm so glad they're here. I want them to stay. Please stay and continue to spread this throughout your generation. Absolutely. This is not an ageist message. This is a message only to people who are partisan barnacles.
No, for the record, I wasn't clarifying for you. I was clarifying for myself because I've been talking about the 65 up thing. But it's a really important, clarification that in every age group there are, like, for instance, the Zoomers or the younger millennials were thought of as being the woke generation, right? But there's massive exceptions to that rule. In fact, Gen Z has become probably the most aggressively based generation that is alive today, arguably. So I think that there's always exceptions to the rule, but there's also lessons that can be learned by looking at kind of demographic trends and shifts. And what we know is that the older generation still has some sort of blind allegiance to a foreign country. They still have a blind allegiance to corporate news and the duopoly. And those people are all nearing the end of their lives. That's just the reality of life. So the tidal wave is coming. It's just inevitable that it's coming. It's just a matter of, can we actually keep the country, our financial situation, the dollar reserve status, prevention of World War III? Can we keep all of these things from spinning out of control before that tidal wave of demographic shift hits? And I don't know the answer to that, but this is the reason I approach every day with such urgency, that, like, I'm not going to rest on my laurels. I'm going to believe and proceed as if Massie in 2028 is a possibility. Because if he's not, if we go down the AOC versus, I don't know, Marco Rubio path, we're in a lot of trouble. I mean, that's just the reality.
Yeah.
So.
All right. Well, thank you for joining me. I feel better having talked to you. Watch the Liberty Lockdown on YouTube and follow Clint on X. Thank you so much.
Natali, you're the best. Keep your chin up. We got this. Okay. Feeling a little better. I hope the rest of you are too. And thanks for watching us. That's going to do it for us on Redacted today. I hope you're feeling better. A little, silver lining. We got to.
So thank you for joining us. Hey, before we go, though, we want to tell you about NetSuite, because every business right now is asking the same question. How do we actually use AI without wasting time and money? Because sitting on the sidelines is not an option anymore. Your competitors are already making moves. That's why today's episode is sponsored by NetSuite by Oracle. It is the #1 AI cloud ERP trusted by more than 43,000 businesses. And what makes it powerful is it brings everything into one system. Financials, inventory, human resource, commerce, CRM, all connected in one single source of truth. That's connected data, and that's why AI really can be so useful. So instead of guessing, it can automate routine tasks, deliverable, actionable insights, help you cut costs, let you make faster decisions with confidence. This isn't some AI gimmick. It's built directly into the systems that can run your business efficiently. And honestly, if we were building modern infrastructure today, this is exactly the kind of system we would want to start with from the ground up. If you do it early, you don't have to make so many adjustments. So if your revenues are at least in the 7 figures, get the free business guide called Demystifying AI. You can find it at netsuite.com/redacted. Download that guide today. Learn how businesses are growing, and you don't want to be left behind. Again, that's netsuite.com/redacted. One more time, netsuite.com/redacted. Well, thank you so much for joining us on this Wednesday. It's been great to have you here, a part of our conversation. We really are glad that you did. Hit that like button and leave a comment if you would. We love talking to you, and we will see you tomorrow, Thursday. Thanks again, everybody.